Just questions.
Welcome to Chicago.
Thanks.
It's like to be here, and how much are you looking forward to this?
I am really, really excited. This is my favorite stop on the tour. I said this the other night talking to some people at the draft party that one of the, I mean, it's not a secret, but one of the things that broadcasters and I'm sure a lot of other media tend to do when you get the schedule at the start of the year is look at your favorite cities and circle when those stops are and then see if you've got a night off before or if it's back to back. And whenever Chicago, we were here with a night off, I was always stoked. Made my reservation at Gibson's and couldn't wait to get here. So the fact that I can come here now and work as a Hawks broadcaster is an amazing opportunity. I can't wait to get started.
How did this all come together? Just with Blackhawks reaching out to you? Or?
They did, yeah. So I was in the last year of my contract in Calgary. I worked for the network in Canada, not with the team, and they wanted me back. And I was just looking forward to signing a new deal. And the Hawks reached out. It happened really quick after that. It was basically a week, and there was an offer on the table. So, sort of a blink of an eye. The last month has been quite chaotic, as you can imagine, but very exciting.
How much are you looking forward to teaming up with Darren?
That's a huge part of it. When I went to Calgary 10 years ago, a very attractive component of that whole opportunity was working with Kelly Rudy, and the same applies to Darren Pang. He's one of the best in the business. Great guy on top of it. Him and I have done a lot of hanging out since I've been in and out of Chicago over the last couple of weeks, and I can't wait to get started with him either. It's like playing, right? When you have a great partner, if you're a defenseman, your game is so much easier, and broadcasting works the same way. And I'm hoping we can do some great shows together. So I can't wait to get started.
How much did wanting to be at the ground floor of a potential rebuild and the special run they could go on with Connor here play a role in wanting to be here maybe longer term?
Yeah, that's part of it too. I mean, you've got a superstar player, a team I feel is on the rise that may get better faster than people think it will, but that's part of it too. And then couple that with Original Six franchise and world-class city, and really professionally there were almost no negatives. If you do the old positive negative column when you're trying to make a big decision, there were a whole bunch of checks in the positive, and really the only negative was leaving Calgary because I love it there. So that part was tough. Everything else, very easy.
The prospects of being the soundtrack of potentially a generational player, what goes through your mind when you think about that?
Yeah, it's, what can you ask for more out of a broadcaster, right, is watching a guy who, one day will likely be in the Hall of Fame. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he is definitely a star in this league, and I hope I can, do it justice when he's doing things on the ice that you don't see very often. So that another attractive prospect of coming here was Connor Bedard. I actually have a very good friend of mine whose son played with him very briefly in Regina. And he's been telling me about Connor since they were kids, when he was still on the Lower Mainland in BC, and saying, this kid's going to be unbelievable. And like 3 or 4 years later, when he went to junior, I go, that's the guy you've been talking about. He goes, yeah, I've been watching him since he's 10 years old. And just kind of interesting that I'll get a chance to call him now on a regular basis in the NHL.
Was it Jamie that reached out to you, or Danny? This team has a history of having the big boss man pick the announcer.
Yeah, I talked to Jamie and then to Danny as well. We had a meeting and a dinner when I came out. The first conversation was on Friday, and I was here on a Tuesday the next week. And then, really happened quick after that. So, yeah, everybody was involved in terms of ownership and management. So, and it meant a lot to me that, that Danny was there as well. So, just tell, and my message to them is I just want to do the best show I can do, and hopefully we're one of the best shows in the league. And if we can do that, that is objective number one whenever I go on the air. And having Darren Pang at my side is I think will be a big factor in trying to get that done.
What do you know about Chicago's fan base, particularly how intense it can be with their broadcasters in any sport?
I'm sure it's like most rabid fan bases, that it's going to be a tough crowd to impress, but I've done this a long time, and I've worked in Vancouver, and I've worked in Calgary, and those are both hockey hotbeds too. So hopefully, I would say to people, the work will speak for itself. It's not like we do it in secret. It's out there, and I just hope they like it.
Is there anything you're going to change stylistically now that you kind of have a fresh slate to approach the job differently, or will it be pretty much the same as you did?
I'm going to do the broadcast in French. I hope they're okay with that. No, not really. I just, I've been in this business a long time, doing play-by-play full-time really for 20 years. So I don't think, I'll change much. I don't think it'll take long because Darren's been doing it even longer than I have. I think we'll get our chemistry going fairly quickly. That'll be the only real adjustment, and I think it'll be an easy one.
Who were some of the broadcasters you looked up to as a kid?
There were two primarily. There was a guy in Vancouver named Jim Robson, who's in the Hall of Fame, who was their radio broadcaster. I grew up in a city called Kelowna. It's about 4 hours inland from Vancouver. And, back in the day, only, a third of the games were actually on TV. So you listen to the games on the radio, and he was the Vancouver Canucks to me growing up as a kid. And great guy, and I got to know him a little bit after he retired when I was working in Vancouver, and he was just a sweet man on top of being an unbelievable broadcaster. And the other guy was Bob Cole, the longtime voice of Hockey Night in Canada, who passed away just recently, in fact. But it's funny because they're different stylistically, but I think I've probably borrowed a little bit from both of those guys and sort of melded them into what I do. So those were the two guys for me that had the biggest impact.
Well, how would you-
And so you might not have been able to do this. I'm going to date myself. But be able to spin the AM dial
Yeah.
here in the Great Lakes area, Ontario, wherever. Were you able to do that? Were you able to?
Yeah.
Do that?
Yeah, listen to, I used to get KGO out of San Francisco on the skip signals up into Canada and stuff. Yeah, we used to do that quite a bit. Not so much for sports, because you had to wait till it was late at night, and being on the West Coast, there wasn't a lot going on by that point, but definitely listening to radio. Radio was a huge influence on me early in my life, like, sitting with the family and listening to the radio in the kitchen. And, it's kind of how I got into it. I had a custodian at my high school who was an old hockey coach who used to do the color commentary on the junior hockey broadcasts. And he introduced me to the sports director at the radio station. He was a celebrity to me. I thought, this is fantastic. And the guy took a liking to me. His name was Brian Cooling, and kind of had me come in and do some stuff on the air, cover, like if I was playing in a basketball tournament, he'd have me phone a report in at the end of the weekend, and they'd run it the next day on the morning show. And that's sort of how I got started. This is kind of cool. It's funny how things will nudge you onto a path, and here we are all these years later, and I'm standing in Chicago. You never dreamed of that happening.
How would you characterize your style, and what sets you apart from other broadcasters?
Yeah, that's hard to quantify. I think I'm not a screamer, or I'm not I don't have a bunch of catchphrases. I like to just sort of capture the moment with my own emotion and hopefully find the right words to fit any given situation. So it's difficult to describe my style. I'm probably more old school. Like Bob Cole is the guy I probably would look at as the biggest comparison. Not that I'm comparing myself to him, but in terms of the way I call a game, I would lean more to his style. And if I can capture even a small percentage of what he did, it'd be a huge compliment, because I think he's the best that ever did it as a play-by-play guy in this sport.
You've called some big games.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been a big part of the excitement of those games. Which one's your favorite? Of all the games that you've called, there are a lot, but which one's your favorite?
Well, I would say the one in the playoffs a couple of years ago when the Flames played Dallas in the first round, and that series was back and forth. Jake Ottinger was unbelievable for the Stars. The shots were, 50 to 20 most nights in the Flames' favor. And he stood on his head, and it went to Game 7 in Calgary, in overtime. The Flames had 70 shots on goal, I think, something like that. And wound up winning. Johnny Gaudreau scores a goal in overtime. Just the building, I thought, was going to explode. The crowd went crazy, and they had a huge crowd outside the building as well. So when you can call a Game 7 overtime playoff winner on home ice in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you can't top that. I mean, I've never had a chance to call a Cup final, but short of getting a chance to do that, I don't think there'd be many moments that would be more exciting than seeing a team win on home ice in a Game 7 overtime.
Did you know Pat Foley well?
Yeah.
Has he talked to you?
I haven't talked to Pat yet, but I know Pat. I mean, from the circuit, I didn't know him really well, other than you guys know as media members, you see guys when you're out on the road, and he's an awesome guy and an unbelievable broadcaster. And was here for 40 years doing games. Like, that's an incredible run. So I have a ton of respect for him, and again, one of the best to ever do it.
What do you do away from hockey for fun? I said Banger's taking out, so I assume
Yeah.
golf was involved in that somehow.
I'll play a little golf badly every now and then. I like to play the piano badly every now and then. But yeah, like that's probably my favorite pastime, to sit around and plunk around on the keys for, the kind of, it's almost like a meditation for me, so that's helpful. But like to get outside. My wife's in town, and I think we walked 12 miles yesterday around the streets of Chicago. She loves it here, by the way. It's her first time. I've been here a lot. She never comes, so she was excited when the opportunity came up to begin with, and now is that she's been here, really excited. So pretty simple. Do the crossword puzzle in the morning, and watch hockey.
I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so it's okay if you can't remember, but do you have a particular Blackhawks call that you remember, or Blackhawks moment, from the playoffs or something
That's hard to say. Yeah, like when I was in Vancouver, I was in Vancouver when the Hawks and the Canucks played those 3 years in a row, but I wasn't calling the playoff games. So I was here, watched all 3 of those series, every game, every second. That was a lot of fun, but I wasn't actually calling those. I was hosting the between periods and the pre and post game show. But what that did, what I did experience was how incredible the city is when the team's in the playoffs. I mean, the energy in that building is unbelievable. Starting with the anthem, even the regular season. You start with that anthem, and then you add the intensity of the playoffs on top of that. It was an incredible experience. And 3 years in a row covering Hawks Canucks was. It did weigh into the decision a bit in terms of coming here, because I spent more of an extended period of time in Chicago, which I learned how much I loved it here, and being around the building and the fans with that level of play on the ice and intensity off of it was a great experience, and I can't wait to see this team back in the playoffs again, because it's something else.